Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It has just gone past the hour, so we'll give it just a few moments for others to join, and we'll get kicked off with the session for today. We will be recording the session, and we'll be sure to share the link with everyone after the call. Okay, thanks again for your time, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get kicked off. Today's session, let's talk about OTA reservations. We're going to be reviewing our management of third-party and travel agent reservations online. So your team for today's call, you'll have myself, Christopher Devlin. I am the manager of learning for the company, and also Julia Josephson's on the call with me too. She's one of our senior implementation consultants. Both of us have a lot of history in the world of revenue. So hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have throughout the call today. As a little bit of housekeeping and a little bit of a review of the agenda. So we're going to be looking at how we can sync up some company and travel agent cards with our CRS systems and some of the benefits of doing that, some of the kind of bells and whistles we can automate with that process. We will talk about setting up virtual card handling for those entities that are sending us virtual credit cards to charge them directly. We've got some nice options there. We'll also look at our company and travel agent best practices for those cards, for those profiles, things like the notes and alerts that can be added to be shared with all reservations, how we can use actions and add-ons to manage the guest process in terms of any upsells and enhancements on their reservations. And then we'll be looking at some commission reconciliation. How do we look for commissions? How can we modify non-commissionable reservations to be commissionable, and so on. Then we'll wrap up with a question and answer session. We'll leave a bit of time for that towards the end. It will be text-based questions and answers. So you'll have the option throughout to drop any questions into the chat box, and you should find that on your screen to the top right, but it obviously might depend on the system that you're working in. So if you want to drop any questions in there throughout, we'll take some time to review those at the end. We'll also be offering some polls as we go through the agenda today, so look out for those. We'll be soliciting some feedback. This is the first of the sessions, and we do want to make these as useful as possible for customers. So if you have any ideas for anything that you'd like to do any deep dives on in future, please feel free just to drop that in there too, and we'll make sure to take that into consideration. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into our first topic, which is the syncing of CRS company cards with CRSs and how that can benefit with OTAs specifically. So I'm going to change my screen share here. Bear with me just one moment. My apologies, one moment here. Okay, there we go. I think everyone can see my screen now. So we're going to jump over to the system here, and we'll talk about the company and travel agent cards and how those can sync up. So the first thing we're going to do is actually jump into revenue management and company and TA cards, just to kind of review what we can see in this area. So there is actually a trick here if you're unfamiliar. If you want to look at all the entities you have in any of these areas, if you do 3% signs, that's the wild card, and that will return all the records that you have available for your particular property. Bear in mind, if you have an awful lot of records, it might take some time for this to load. Thankfully, in this demonstration property, it's just a few, so it didn't take too long at all. So the difference primarily between a company card and a travel agent card lies in some of the information that's sent down from the CRS for those cards. Primarily that being that a travel agency would have an IATA number versus a company which would have a corporate ID field. And it's those fields that can be synced when it comes to looking at travel agents and companies. So what do we mean by that? Let's actually take a look here. We're going to dive into Expedia in this particular instance. Actually, no, we'll go back to a company here. Bear with me one moment. Let's choose Samsung down here. So in the company profile and Stay in Touch, you'll see that there's this corporate ID field. Now this field is a free-form text field, and you can put an alphanumeric code into this field. And so long as there's a similar value in the company profile on your CRS, when we receive that reservation message from your CRS with that corporate ID in the code for that reservation, our system will know to include this particular profile that's coming down from the CRS. So what that means is if there's any default billing instructions that we might have in place here, the system will know that that's what should be used for this particular reservation. And that can also include things obviously like direct bill and so on. So however many kind of bells and whistles you have on there, that can all be defaulted based on this corporate ID field coming down. Now, this is primarily for some of the larger players in the CRS world. So this can work, for example, with your Synexes, with your Windsurfers, Pegasus, iHotelier, and TravelClick. These can be entered with corporate IDs, which can match. And if you're looking for any guidance on this, if you refer to our Fresh Desk, our support portal here, you can actually type in CRS sync, and it will show you some of the options we have here. So if I say how to sync a company card, you're going to see some options down here, including videos and articles you can refer to and how to get those two to talk together. Let's just quickly pull up this particular article, and you can see exactly what we're just talking about. Now, when you go into a company card, you'll have this corporate ID field, and this is a Synexis example, but it's very similar for most other CRSs. And as you go further down, we do have some screenshots here that show you where that would be linked or where that would be built in Synexis so that that message flows correctly down. And in this case, it's in the code just here. And once we get that matching code come down into our system again, we can apply any default billing instructions and so on that might live with that particular profile. Now, not every CRS, as I mentioned, will do this automatically. In those cases where you don't have the ability to link the two together, you will get a default profile coming down from your CRS, and that can be used in the same way. So as long as the initial profile is coming from CRS, you can also do things like add default billing information on there. This is just really a way for us to link up profiles that are being made, company cards that are being made on property, to have those communicate back and forth directly with Synexis, whichever CRS it might be that you're using. Sometimes it's not as simple as we would like it to be, however, such is life. And you might find that even with one of those four that I just mentioned, that you have some issues, that it's not working exactly as you would like. And that can often be due to the setup on the CRS side. So you might have to take into consideration if you have any kind of chain functionality built, say in Synexis, that might be impacting the delivery of that corporate ID code. So if you are setting it up like you've seen in the system and it's not working exactly as you would like, first I'd recommend you reach out to the CRS provider just to verify on their end that everything's set up correctly as needed. And if still you're not seeing any success there, feel free to open up a ticket with our support team. If you could just include perhaps an example of a reservation where that didn't flow through, that would be really helpful for us to kind of go back and source the messaging and so on to hopefully get that resolved for you quickly as possible. So that's how we can very easily sync up a company card with our CRS. Now, an add-on to that, an extra piece to that, is the ability for us to handle our virtual credit cards, which is the next component that we're going to jump into. And for that, we're going to take a look at Expedia. So I'm going to pull up our Expedia profile. I'm already in the screen here, so I'll pull this up and we can take a look at a lot of the different options we have going on in here. So first and foremost, there's no corporate ID here. There's no travel agent ID. This is just the profile that we received from the CRS. So I'm adding this on here with billing information and so on. But what I've done here is I've mirrored the contract that we have for Expedia in the CRS. I've mirrored that in our contracts tab over here. Now, this isn't 100% necessary for you to do. It's unlikely that you would have to make many reservations at the PMS level for Expedia. They should be coming through your CRS. But this is just really to mirror what the setup would be like there, in that we have the contract for this entity Expedia, and there are two rate codes that live under this particular travel agent: Expedia Collect and Expedia Hotel Collect. Pretty standard setup for many of our hotels. Now, there are two rate codes associated with this one profile, and that obviously can be a bit of an issue when it comes to billing instructions in any kind of general setup. The idea would be that if we have this profile associated, then whatever billing information we have here will apply to all reservations that are coming down with that particular profile. But for virtual credit cards, we have a little extra step, which can be very helpful. And in billing information here, where this has already been set up for us, you'll see that to Expedia, we currently have room and tax being paid by credit card, but the name on the credit card, specifically the card holder name, has been defaulted for us. And we've put in this value, Expedia virtual card. So stick a pin in that, and I'll quickly come back over here and I'll show you another entity here. We're going to jump into Fisher Travel Agency real quick. And under billing information, there's 0 routes defined here. I just want to show you how this would have been set up to begin with. So we would have clicked on room and tax, and we would have chosen, instead of the payment method here, we would choose the add a virtual card. So that's a second option which exists on these screens. And then here we'll be prompted to put in the virtual card holder name. Now, I have an article open here on our Fresh Desk, which is all about virtual credit card handling. And we do have a reference here. Now, this is just for reference. It lists out the most common names that we'll see for those credit cards. So you'll see this listed out in here, and you can take whatever that value is and drop it into this box over here, and then that should work for you. But we do recommend that you check with the CRS what's coming down. Again, they're standard values, but it is possible that they might not match for every instance. But whatever that value is, based on that value, we know that we can automatically set up routing for that particular reservation. So that will result in you having an arrival screen that might have some Expedia Collect, some Expedia Hotel Collect, and that's going to happen all automatically for you. The benefit, or the secondary benefit to that, of course, being, let's see, I think I had one here. Bear with me one moment. Expedia, let's see if it's this one. Here we go, and I'll just move this out of the way. So here you can see we automatically have this reservation coming through with this suppressed rate based on it being the Expedia Collect rate. We already have our default billing in place here on the right-hand side, and the payment method can be defaulted to cash. And then on check-in, we would be expected to take the guest credit card at that point for incidentals only. So what does that mean in terms of operation? Well, a lot of hotels historically have had to really monitor this very closely to make sure that we're moving, for example, the Expedia credit card to the second bill. That will do all of this for us by default. So you'll see automatically that we'll have the second bill with the Expedia credit card, and we'll be prompted to take a credit card for the actual guest on arrival for incidentals. Let's jump into Julia's over here. So it no longer is necessarily a requirement to take deposits in advance for Expedia credit cards. So a lot of hotels will be taking the payment in advance to then offset that with a nightly room charge as it posts. With this setup, you can actually just leave it as it is, given that the Expedia credit card will be on bill 2 for the room and tax, or just the room charges. When we come to check this guest out, we can just simply use the credit card on file. Now, some hotels do prefer to make sure that they're collecting that perhaps on the day of arrival, perhaps during the stay. If you are using, for example, mobility with mobile checkout, and you can exclude certain rate codes and certain types of guests from mobile checkout, but if you are including your Expedias, for example, then maybe you'd want to go in there during the guest stay prior to checkout and take that money in advance. A lot of hotels and hotels I worked at, that would be done on the morning of departure. So any checked out or due out guests that have that rate code, we would just go through and process the amount to that credit card in advance. And that's really only if you're using mobility. Again, if that's not being done, the system will, you can just check this out to that credit card as you go through the checkout flow. Move back to the stay card here. So how would we best find, if we are intending on taking deposits or taking payment during the guest stay, what would be the best way to find out what to charge? So my recommendation would be to use the credit check report. Now I've already run that for today just to get an idea. And if I open that up, you'll see that we have, I think I have one here for Julia. Yeah, there we go. So Julia has 2 bills on her account because it's Expedia Collect, one under her name, one under Expedia. And again, this would have all been set up automatically for us. And here you can see the projected amount here and then the total it would be. So this is the amount that we would want to actually charge to that credit card. We can go ahead and post that onto bill 2, and you can actually click on here to be brought to the reservation to make those postings. This is the amount that would include tax. Now this particular rate code doesn't have taxes on it, but certainly any that do, you'll see the total amount to be charged with the tax up there. Like this one, for example, up here, does have taxes included there. So that would be our recommendation before checkout. Again, if you're using mobility, to go ahead and run the credit check report just to see which cards need to have any payment taken against them. Otherwise, you can just kind of leave that till the departure date and go ahead and just check it out to the card on file. Okay, we are going to go ahead and pause real quick for a poll, which Julia is going to go ahead and put up on our screen while we get ready for the next section. So we'll give you a moment to fill out that poll, and then we will jump over to our next section. And the poll is now closed, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section. Thanks to everyone who filled that out. So we are now going to look at some of the best practices for our company cards, especially as that might relate to things like our notes and alerts. And then we'll move on to looking at things like actions and so on. So we'll go under our company and travel agent card list again here. Now I've created in advance an example travel agent for us here, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And in here, I have gone ahead and added for us some notes in advance. So under our notes and files tab, you'll see that there's some that I've added here in advance. Now the first one is yellow in background and it's tagged as an alert. And it says all guests to receive welcome letter upon check-in and complimentary bottle of wine on arrival. Please ask for a preference and order with room service. So this is important. This is probably something that's contracted with this particular travel agency, something we want to make sure we're adhering to. So this is not just a note, we've actually built this one as an alert. Below that though, we do have a note. All rates are payable by guests directly, collect CC on arrival. So these are also indicated to share, meaning that they'll post to all reservations. So when adding a note to an entity like a travel agent or company, you'll see this option post to all reservations, which means this is something you want to see on the guest reservations themselves. Now there can be notes that are just specific to the travel agent, maybe nothing to do with the reservations exactly, kind of an internal note. In that case, you would not click it on here. But for these, as we make reservations, we should see these populate for us as we go through that process. So I'm going to go ahead and mimic that right now. We'll go ahead and make a reservation. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Oh, there we are. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Ah, my bad. There we go. And we'll just book that on one of our available rates here. Make a new guest there. Make sure we have our segmentation filled in. And once we have the reservation confirmed, we'll see on the stay card if everything goes to plan. We'll pay that later. So now you'll see here the first of those notes that we added as an alert is appearing in the middle of the reservation, the stay card on the top with this yellow background. And again, this is really highlighting this for us so that it's drawing attention to the screen, making sure that we're going to action whatever we see here. And by action means we're just going to obviously get that information from the guest. We'll check this off so we can see that it was a result by myself. And then when we re-enter the stay card, this will just appear as a collapsed alert. So we can always go back to review it in future if we need to, but it'll be there for us to review. But we'll know now that that's been taken care of. And on the left, we have that one that was not determined to be an alert, just a note in general, which we'll see on the left-hand side here. So that's a nice, easy way to kind of default some information, especially as it may help for any kind of operational things that might need to happen. This could also be something, maybe if there's a particular package, if there's housekeeping notes that need to be made. All this is very useful to have in there. In addition, we also have our actions and add-ons, which we're going to cover in just a moment. But before we do that, we have a quick poll. We're just going to solicit your feedback on this particular feature. So Julia is going to pop that up on the screen for us now, and then we'll dive into our actions and add-ons section. Perfect. Thank you so much for everyone responding to that one. It looks like we got a good spread, actually. It looks like almost half of us did not know that that was an option. So that's good. That's definitely something that everyone can start using right away to their benefit. And similarly, we're going to look now at our actions and add-ons. So with regards to our add-ons, those are our packages, our enhancements that can be built for adding to guest stays. That can be baked into the rate and so on. Lots of different options there. Now, it is possible with certain CRSs to have these as sell separates, things that can be sold ad hoc during a guest stay. And for some CRSs, it's possible for us to map those, which means if you purchase it, let's say on the CRS side, it'll flow through automatically and appear on the guest reservation, all by default, very much set it and forget it. But that's not the case with every CRS. Some of them will send that information down more as a note, as part of the notes from the CRS. And for that type of thing, we'll probably want to be sure that we're running our arrivals reports with notes and actions, just so we can make sure that we're seeing all of that information. So for this, we're actually going to run an arrivals report and see everything that we have on this reservation on screen, as well as any other reservations that are coming in. So we'll go to our new reports, and I will choose my arrival report for today. And in my options, I'm going to include notes, include actions, and we'll show guests too. Again, these are fields that can be pre-populated for you if this is a scheduled report, so you can certainly have this set to run every day, come to your email inbox and so on. Once we have that populated, we'll be able to review and see all these different things that we can make sure are set up for the day to make sure we're going to have success with our guests. So it looks like my particular reservation has quite a few notes, reservation notes and guest notes and actions. So this is a nice way to have this all on one screen. And again, from this arrival report, you can click dynamically into these reservations, make whatever changes need to happen. It'll take you to the stay card, make any updates that need to happen there, and then you go directly back to the report as long as you're using it on screen. So let's talk about what would happen if we have one of those reservations come down where the guest has purchased something, but it's not a CRS connection that will automatically populate that for us in the system. So I have an example here. We have this reservation for Michael, and you'll see down here we have some res notes. So we see it's a double queen studio, he's requesting a high floor, and then we see services in this example, and then pet fee. Now this is perhaps how that would look as it's coming down. It would be part of the message that's in the res notes, and it would indicate that they've booked this particular enhancement. So we do have a pet fee at this particular property. So what would this mean that I should do? If that's your setup, you would just go into the reservation, and then you would make sure to add that particular add-on on the right-hand side here beside the rates and add-ons. You just make sure to add that specifically to the reservation here by clicking on add. Then it'll be on there. It'll impact the price, however that's configured to be, and it'll basically mirror what was ever confirmed on the CRS side for this particular guest. So that's the easiest way to kind of monitor for those coming through and then adding them. You could also do that if you didn't want to do it through the arrivals report, you could do it through the reservations report. So any reservations made today, for example, for any future stays. So you can kind of handle it on the day of arrival or on the day of reservation, whatever makes most sense operationally for you all. Those are some good options there. Another thing that we might see, even in relation to this pet fee, for example, perhaps we need to alert housekeeping on the day of departure to make sure that they do a deep clean. So we have our actions area on the left-hand side here. So what I probably want to do is go in here and then do a new action. And I'll choose housekeeping. and then I can add a note here. But you notice we did have some default actions here, which makes it very easy for me to kind of select. And in this case, I'll do pet room departure deep clean. It's default into my departure date. It knows which department to choose. So it's a real quick way of getting some of these kind of most common things selected real quick there. So pet room departure clean and then post action, and it's set it and forget it. So if you're not using these default actions yet either, these can be configured in the back end of the system. Under reservations and actions, and then you can enable default actions and just fill these out here. You basically choose if it's going to be on the arrival date, the departure date, or today whenever it's entered, and then a specific time and departure that those get sent to. That's a really nice way to make sure that you are actioning anything that needs to happen for a guest stay. That's kind of like the to-do list for each department relating to guest reservations and preparing for them. Okay, so now we are ready to travel over to our commissions area. So I'm going to move back to the front end of the system, and we are going to pull up our company and travel agent cards. Now, this is one way to get into the commissions for a specific entity. We could also get into the commissions from a reservation. So again, if we're in, let's say, our arrivals screen here, and I'll use Expedia as an example. I do have it set up as a travel agent in this particular example. Generally, a lot of hotels won't be paying Expedia commission, but it's a good example given we have it on screen. So from the guest reservation, I can just actually click in here, and then I have access to all the different tabs in that travel agent profile, so long as I have access, permission to view those. And in this case, it's commissions, so we'll click into there. So that's one way of doing it from the reservation. Again, we can do it through the company and travel agent profile area that you see here. And then the other way would be under financials and then commissions. That's the actual commissions module itself. So once we're in here, what do we see? There's nothing on screen currently, and that might be because my date range is not correct. Maybe I don't have any commissionable records for that date range. But if I click into here, you'll see that we're only looking for commissionable and not any non-commissionable bills. So I can toggle that over and we can maybe look to see if we have any. Yep, it looks like we do. There are some non-commissionable entries under Expedia. So let's go ahead and click in here. And it's bringing us to the travel agent profile, but it's taking us directly to that commissions tab. So what can we do on here? Well, the first thing you'll see is we're looking for unpaid, but we're specifically looking for commissionable. So we don't have any commissionable, but if I toggle to non-commissionable, I'm going to see pretty much all the records I have associated with this particular travel agent. So if for whatever reason I happened to be perhaps doing a special promotion where we're paying commission to Expedia over a given date range or so on, or perhaps erroneously this guest was put under the wrong rate code and they actually should have been given commission for this particular stay, I'm able to modify it after the fact. And I can do that in a couple of ways. I'll just select one record for the time being. I'll click into Julia's here. And you see we have new options appearing on the top of the screen here. So I have my hold status. It's possible for me to put this on hold, meaning maybe I'm still investigating. Maybe there's an issue with this particular reservation that we want to check before paying commission or declining to do so. It is set to unpaid currently, but that can be updated and you can set that to paid. That's useful, especially if you're using an external commission payment module. So you'd basically be using this to reconcile, make sure that everything is correct. And then once you're done and perhaps having that check cut from your external system, you can toggle over those ones that you reviewed to paid. Now we only have one selected here, but obviously as you can see, there's a box here where we could select everything and make modifications very simply there. Another thing we can do is recalculate commission by either a percentage or an amount. So in this case, again, none of this was commissionable, but if I were to go ahead and say that it should be commissionable at 10% and then to recalculate that one particular record, we'll see that update over here at 10% in a new field. So again, it's not exactly the same, it's not showing it as being commissionable. And in this case, we're seeing the amount being 0. Now that's most likely because we haven't actually identified which charge codes should be commissionable. And we'll take a look quickly at how that's set up. So I'm going into the back end of the system once more. And in here, you'll see we have commissions enabled first and foremost. We have commissions by agent and then set for new card. Now, if I turn on commissions by rate and set this to 10%, we'll go ahead and save there. And now if I go to my rates and we'll choose our Expedia Collect. I'll give that a moment to load. Now in here, you'll see if I enable commission, if I make this rate a commissionable rate, it's defaulting to the 10%, which we just had on that other screen. And then it's asking me charge codes. Non-selection of charge codes means entire stay cost. Now this particular rate code, there is only one charge code. It's room charge without tax. But if this were a taxable rate, you would also see the taxes listed out there. And if you weren't selecting only the room charge code, it's basically telling you that the entire stay cost would be commissionable. And that's generally not something that you want to do. So just bear in mind, if a rate is commissionable, you want to go in here and just make sure you're only selecting the room charge for that. A rate code supersedes a travel agent profile. And what that means is if your travel agent profile is commissionable, but the rate code itself is not marked as commissionable, then they will not receive commission. They will not automatically calculate for them based on that. But now that we've identified which charge code should be commissionable, from now on, we'll actually see that update as the payable amount when we're under the commissions module in here. And we'll just get rid of the filter there. Now in your property, you might have an awful lot more entities than you see in here. And you may have none. That could be because the commission toggle is not activated. A lot of properties are doing their commissions directly from the CRS, for example. So there's not much of a need for them to have this in here. But if you do have it enabled and you are using it, at least just for reference and reconciliation, it's a really good tool to go in there and determine perhaps why a particular reservation was not marked as commissionable. And that could be because it was a cancellation or a no-show. All of this you can pretty much find within this one screen. And you can also print this off directly from here just to get that information. There are also plenty of reports that you can be generated to get that information out there too. And that's all available under our reports area. So we have another poll for you. We're going to go ahead and have Julia bring that up for us real quick. Okay, thanks again, everyone, for filling in that poll for us. We very much appreciate it. So now we're actually going to toggle over to our live Q&A. So we covered the main topics that we wanted to cover for today. So Julia has been monitoring the chat box to get our questions, and she is going to go ahead and start giving us some of those. And another reminder, if you would like to, feel free to drop in any suggestions for future topics that you might be interested in seeing. Lots of things we can cover, anything from financials to, again, reservations and rates related, maybe user management, whatever might be of interest to you. And with that, I'll go ahead and let Julia chime in with our first question.
Yes, thank you all for asking questions. I've answered a couple of them at the beginning. I kind of pushed to show to everyone, but most of them I answered privately. And the first one that I wanted to address was Emily's question. where she said that they have Expedia, either a company or travel agent card flowing in, and they currently have routing set up for the virtual credit cards, but it also routes the hotel collect bookings, and asked if there's a way to stop this. There definitely is a way to do that. When you're setting up the virtual card handling on the company or travel agent card, when you are entering the card holder information, we'll wait for Chris to pull this up too. So in the add billing information section, that virtual card name there needs to be exactly what you're receiving on the reservations for this to work. For most hotels, for Expedia and for the other OTAs, it's very consistent across the reservations that you receive. So in the case of Expedia, it would be in all capital letters, Expedia space virtual card, one word, like you see it written there. And if it's not written like that, or if it's not added there, then you would see some errors with the routing. The next question that I wanted to review was, Rebecca said that they have a situation where they have two Mr. and Mrs. Smith travel agent cards and couldn't figure out why some reservations go to one and some reservations go to the other. And that answer is that the CRS, your CRS, so that's Synexis or Windsurfer or TravelClick, there are settings on the CRS level that are pushing through different profiles for different types of reservations. In Rebecca's case, it was that there were two different rate codes, and there must have been settings on the Synexis side where it's sending one profile with this rate and second profile with this rate. That's something that you can work with your CRS support team to fix if you're having that problem. And then another question was about if you're using the commission handling functionality, will that affect your revenue if you're just using it for reconciliation? And the answer is definitely not. It won't affect your revenue in any way. It doesn't affect your financials in any way. It's really just for your reconciliation. And when I was reconciling my OTA commissionable statements, it was literally just sort of, I could print it out as backup to include with the invoice that I was submitting to accounting. We've gotten a couple other questions. Can we talk about Booking.com's tax change? We have some reservations where we pay tax and some where Booking.com collects tax. And any best practices here during the transition time with Booking.com? I'm surprised to hear that, just because Booking.com, I haven't heard that yet from other properties. Booking.com, as some of you may know, doesn't differentiate their sort of like prepaid Booking.com collect reservations from the hotel collect reservations in the way that they send them down, like the way Expedia does. So I think that that's actually pretty challenging if that's the case. I would talk to Booking.com about that and explain that they're not sending it in a format that is really acceptable in that way, in the way that Expedia does. Maybe they can improve that over time. We certainly will share a recording of this webinar so that you can review it again. And if you have any other questions, I will follow up with you if we don't get back by the end of this, because we're about to wrap up. I think that's mostly it, though. Those are the big ones that were relevant to a vast majority.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Julia. Well, in that case, we'll go ahead and wrap up. There will be a couple of questions that'll pop up on your screen as we go ahead and close the session today. So please take the time, if you can, to fill those out for us. One of which, again, being any future ideas you have for any of these sessions that would be valuable for you. Again, if it's something you're interested in, probably something a lot of other people are too. So feel free to fill that in. Thanks again for your time. We will be sending out the recording to all attendees, and we hope to see you again on the next one. We look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everyone.